Chicago was a city of dreams, but for Lucas and Milda, it was their home. Their 6 years of marriage had been filled with love, laughter, and the usual ups and downs. Lucas, a dedicated banker, provided for his family with steady hands. Their son, Jenny, had just started school, and his boundless energy brought life to their modest home. But not everything was as perfect as it seemed. "Lucas, don't you think we could have more? A bigger house? Fancier vacations?" Milda asked one evening as they sat together after dinner. Lucas smiled. "We don't need more, Milda. We have each other, Jenny, and a stable life. Isn't that enough?" Milda forced a smile, but her thoughts drifted. Enough? It wasn't. She dreamed of wealth, of luxury cars and designer clothes, of a life that turned heads. Over time, the monotony of their life began to feel suffocating. Milda's discontent was subtle at first, lingering glances at lifestyle magazines, wistful sighs during TV commercials of luxury resorts. But as weeks turned into months, her dissatisfaction grew into something she could no longer ignore. No one, not even Lucas, could foresee how drastically their lives were about to change. It happened during an ordinary shopping trip. Milda was browsing the aisles of a local store when a familiar voice called her name. "Milda, is that you?" She turned and saw Matthew, her college classmate. He looked sharp, dressed in a tailored suit, his watch gleaming under the fluorescent lights. "Matthew, it's been years," Milda exclaimed, her voice tinged with surprise. They exchanged pleasantries, and Matthew suggested coffee. Over steaming cups, they talked about their lives. Matthew shared his story, a brief, failed marriage, and a rise to financial success. He owned multiple businesses and traveled the world. "And you?" Matthew asked, leaning back in his chair. "I'm a housewife now," Milda replied, her voice quieter than she intended. That evening, as Milda walked back home, her thoughts were a whirlwind. Matthew's life seemed like everything she had ever wanted. Luxurious, exciting, enviable. Her own life felt unbearably dull in comparison. For the first time, Milda began to entertain thoughts she never had before. What if she could have more? What if her life didn't have to be so ordinary? The seed of desire had been planted, and it would soon grow into something she couldn't control. Days turned into weeks, but Matthew was all Milda could think about. His charisma, his wealth, and his confidence were a stark contrast to her everyday life. So, when she received a call from Matthew inviting her for coffee again, she didn't hesitate. Their second meeting felt even more natural. Matthew leaned in closer, his voice smooth and inviting as he shared stories of his ventures and travels. Milda, in turn, opened up about her struggles. She spoke about feeling trapped in routine, about wanting more from life. "You deserve better, Milda," Matthew said, his words lingering in her mind. When she returned home, Lucas was sitting with Jenny, helping him with his homework. The scene should have warmed her heart, but instead, it only highlighted the contrast between her two worlds, the mundane simplicity of her current life and the dazzling possibility Matthew represented. The coffee meetings became regular. Milda lied to Lucas, saying she was meeting old friends or running errands. Each time she met Matthew, he surprised her with thoughtful gestures, a bracelet, an expensive perfume, even a designer handbag. "Matthew, I can't accept this," she protested once, though her heart raced with excitement. "Why not?" "You deserve it," he replied with a charming smile. Lucas began to notice the changes. Milda's once warm demeanor grew colder. She became distant, often avoiding conversations or snapping at minor inconveniences. Lucas confronted her one evening, his tone gentle yet firm. "Milda, is something wrong? You've been acting differently," he asked. "I'm fine, Lucas. Stop imagining things," she replied curtly, brushing past him. But Lucas knew better. He began to piece together the puzzle, though he said nothing. He could feel her slipping away, and the realization broke his heart. Meanwhile, Milda found herself dreaming of a life with Matthew. His wealth, charm, and lifestyle became an obsession. Every gift, every compliment fueled her desires. She began to see Lucas not as her partner, but as an obstacle to the life she wanted. And then, one day, Matthew said the words that changed everything. "Milda, if you were mine, I'd give you the world." The line between fantasy and reality blurred, and Milda started making plans that would soon shatter the world she and Lucas had built together. Milda's secret meetings with Matthew became the center of her life. Each encounter pulled her further away from Lucas, her affection for her husband replaced by a growing resentment. The gifts, the promises, and Matthew's undeniable charm convinced her that she deserved more, much more than Lucas could ever provide. One evening, Lucas came home from work to find Milda distant again. She was scrolling through her phone, barely acknowledging him. He sat across from her, taking a deep breath. "Milda," he began softly, "we need to talk." She looked up, her expression neutral. "About what?" "You've been different," he said, choosing his words carefully. "You're not the same woman I married. I feel like I'm losing you." Milda sighed, placing her phone down. "Lucas, maybe it's because I've grown tired of this life," she said coldly. "You're happy being stuck in the same routine, but I want more. I deserve more." Lucas's heart sank. "Milda, we have a good life. We have Jenny, a home, stability. Isn't that enough?" "For you, maybe," she snapped, "but I want a life worth living." That night, Milda made up her mind. She met Matthew the next day and confessed her unhappiness. "I can't live like this anymore, Matthew," she said, tears glistening in her eyes. "Then don't," Matthew replied smoothly. "You deserve to be with someone who appreciates you. Someone like me." His words sealed her decision. When Milda returned home, she told Lucas the devastating news. "I want a divorce," she declared, her voice devoid of emotion. Lucas froze, unable to comprehend what he was hearing. "A divorce? Milda, think about Jenny. Think about us." "I've thought about it," she replied. "This isn't the life I want." Over the next few weeks, the house that was once filled with laughter became a battleground of silence. Lucas tried to save their marriage, but Milda had already moved on in her heart. The day the divorce was finalized, Milda packed her things and left with Matthew, leaving Lucas and Jenny behind. As she drove away, she felt a thrill of excitement, convinced she had made the right choice. But Lucas stood in the doorway, holding Jenny close, his heart shattered. "We'll get through this," he whispered to his son. Neither Lucas nor Milda could predict how drastically their paths were about to diverge. Milda stepped into her new life with Matthew, basking in the luxuries he provided. Her days were filled with designer shopping sprees, lavish dinners, and parties in high-end circles. The once muted colors of her life with Lucas were replaced by the glitz and glamour she had always craved. Matthew, ever the charming host, introduced her to his wealthy friends. They toasted to their newfound happiness. Milda felt victorious, convinced she had traded her mundane existence for a world of endless possibilities. But beneath the surface, cracks began to form. "Matthew, isn't this car a bit old?" Milda remarked one day, eyeing his sleek but slightly dated sports car. Matthew laughed uneasily. "Business hasn't been great lately, but it's just a phase. Things will pick up." Milda brushed it off, focusing instead on the expensive necklace he had gifted her the week before. Yet, as the months passed, Matthew's explanations became repetitive. One evening, while Milda lounged in their extravagant apartment, Matthew arrived home, looking unusually tense. "What's wrong?" she asked, her tone clipped. "It's the market," he admitted, loosening his tie. "A few deals fell through. I just need time to bounce back." Milda frowned. She had left Lucas, a stable husband, for this. An uncertain future? But Matthew's charm always found a way to reassure her. Meanwhile, Lucas was rebuilding his life. He poured his energy into raising Jenny, finding joy in the small moments. He also dabbled in cryptocurrency investments, guided by a close friend, Ethan, who encouraged him to take calculated risks. "Just think of it as a side project," Ethan advised. "You never know where it might lead." Back in Milda's world, reality came crashing down. Matthew's business ventures began to unravel. Calls from creditors became frequent, and their once luxurious lifestyle started to fade. Milda noticed the shift. No more expensive gifts, no more grand parties. "Matthew, what's happening?" she demanded one evening. "I told you, Milda, it's a rough patch," he snapped, his frustration boiling over. But it wasn't a rough patch. It was a collapse. Matthew's business crumbled, and with it, the lavish life he had promised Milda. Soon, they were forced to sell their apartment and move into a much smaller place. Milda's dreams of wealth were slipping through her fingers. She couldn't help but wonder if she had made a terrible mistake. As Milda watched her once dreamy life with Matthew fall apart, Lucas's fortunes began to soar. What started as a small cryptocurrency investment had turned into an avalanche of wealth. Lucas, guided by Ethan's advice, watched his portfolio grow exponentially as the crypto market boomed. "Lucas, your shares have tripled," Ethan exclaimed during one of their late-night calls. "You're sitting on a gold mine." For the first time in months, Lucas smiled. A genuine smile. It wasn't just about the money. It was the sense of rebuilding, of proving to himself and to Jenny that they could thrive despite the heartbreak. Back in Milda's world, desperation was setting in. Matthew's financial collapse had left him penniless. His once dazzling confidence was now replaced by a defeated demeanor. The luxury cars were gone, the apartment sold, and creditors were circling like vultures. "Matthew, you said we'd bounce back," Milda shouted during one of their frequent arguments. "I'm trying, Milda," he yelled back, his voice cracking with frustration. "What do you want me to do? I've lost everything." Milda stared at him, the weight of her choices sinking in. She had left Lucas, a man who had always been steady and dependable, for a dream that was now crumbling into dust. Meanwhile, Lucas's newfound wealth was transforming his life. He had become a millionaire overnight, but he remained grounded. His first priority was Jenny, who was thriving under Lucas's care and attention. Lucas also began to dream again, not of wealth, but of a life filled with purpose and joy. "You deserve this, Lucas," Ethan told him. "Keep building. You've got the chance to secure something truly special for you and Jenny." Word of Lucas's success eventually reached Milda. She couldn't believe it. The man she had left for being too ordinary was now living the life she had always craved. The news stirred something in her, a mix of envy and regret. Milda decided to reach out to Lucas, under the guise of wanting to reconnect with Jenny. But Lucas was cautious. He had seen how her greed had driven her choices, and he wasn't about to let her disrupt the new life he had built. As Milda schemed to get closer to Lucas, her desperation grew. The glamorous world she had traded everything for was gone, and she was left staring at the wreckage of her decisions. Little did she know, Lucas was no longer the man she had left behind. Milda's life had become unrecognizable. The days of champagne and designer clothes were gone, replaced by arguments with Matthew over unpaid bills and mounting debts. She spent her nights staring at the ceiling, replaying the decisions that had led her here. One day, while scrolling through social media, Milda stumbled upon a photo of Lucas. He was smiling, standing beside a shiny new car with Jenny by his side. The caption mentioned his success in cryptocurrency investments. Milda's chest tightened. Lucas was now everything she had once dreamed of: wealthy, confident, and happy. How did this happen? She muttered to herself. Her mind raced. If she could get back into Lucas's life, she might secure the comfort and stability she craved. She reached for her phone and called Lucas, her voice feigning warmth. "Hi, Lucas," she began. "I was just thinking about Jenny. I'd love to spend some time with him." Lucas paused. He hadn't heard this tone from Milda in years. "Jenny's happy here, Milda. I don't think that's necessary," he replied cautiously. Milda persisted, her tone shifting to a plea. "Lucas, I'm his mother. I just want to reconnect. Can't we at least talk?" Reluctantly, Lucas agreed to meet her. They met at a small cafe, far from the chaos of their past. Lucas arrived with a guarded demeanor, while Milda tried to mask her desperation. "Lucas, I've made mistakes," she admitted, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "But I want to be there for Jenny. He needs his mother." Lucas looked at her, unmoved. "Jenny needs stability, Milda. I've seen how your decisions affect those around you. I won't let him be hurt again." Milda's attempt at emotional appeal failed, so she shifted her strategy. She filed for custody of Jenny, hoping the legal battle would pressure Lucas into giving her a financial settlement. But Lucas, now more resilient than ever, fought back with everything he had. In court, Lucas presented a strong case. Witnesses testified to his unwavering care for Jenny, while Milda's financial struggles and erratic behavior worked against her. The judge ruled in Lucas's favor, granting him full custody. As the verdict was announced, Milda felt the walls close in around her. Jenny refused to even look at her, his resentment palpable. For the first time, Milda realized just how deeply her choices had scarred the people she claimed to love. As the courtroom cleared, Lucas stood tall, Jenny's hand securely in his. The weight of the custody battle had taken its toll, but the victory was worth it. Jenny was his, and Lucas was determined to give him a life filled with love and stability. Milda, on the other hand, left the courthouse with hollow eyes. The judgment felt like more than a legal decision. It was a symbol of everything she had lost. Lucas, her son, and even her self-respect. She had gambled it all and lost. Life for Lucas began to shift rapidly. With his newfound wealth, he invested more into the cryptocurrency market, guided by his trusted friend Ethan. The returns were astronomical, but Lucas remained grounded. "Money doesn't define happiness," he often reminded himself. "Family does." Jenny began to flourish under Lucas's care. The once confused and hurt boy now thrived with the love and attention of his father. Lucas made a point to be present. School drop-offs, soccer games, and bedtime stories were non-negotiable. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day. Amidst this, Lucas found himself opening up to new possibilities. One afternoon, while attending a charity event hosted by Ethan, he met Elena. She was warm, intelligent, and kind, a stark contrast to the chaos Milda had brought into his life. Jenny took to Elena immediately. She played board games with him, helped with his homework, and treated him as if he were her own. Lucas noticed the way his son laughed more when Elena was around, and his own heart began to heal in her presence. Meanwhile, Milda's world spiraled further into despair. Matthew, now bankrupt, ended their relationship. "I can't take this anymore, Milda," he said coldly. "You're as much a part of my downfall as I am." Thrown out of Matthew's life, Milda was left to fend for herself. She tried reaching out to old friends, but they had long moved on, tired of her constant scheming. As Lucas prepared for his future with Elena, Milda found herself alone in a small, dilapidated apartment. The luxurious life she once craved was nothing but a distant memory. One evening, while scrolling through photos of Lucas's happy family on social media, Milda broke down in tears. She realized she had traded a life of love and loyalty for fleeting wealth, and lost everything in the process. Lucas's life blossomed into something he could only have dreamed of years ago. With Elena by his side, he found a love that was gentle, understanding, and steadfast. Their bond grew stronger with time, and soon they were planning a small, intimate wedding. Jenny was thrilled, calling Elena his bonus mom. Elena's kindness transformed their home. She baked cookies with Jenny, encouraged his hobbies, and supported Lucas's goals. For the first time in years, Lucas felt truly at peace. Meanwhile, Milda's life had turned into a nightmare. Matthew, the man she had sacrificed everything for, was now out of the picture. Her once glamorous lifestyle had crumbled into obscurity. Living in a run-down apartment, she struggled to make ends meet. The world around her seemed unkind. She applied for jobs, only to be turned down repeatedly. The same friends who had once envied her lavish lifestyle now ignored her calls. Even her social media feeds, once filled with snapshots of designer outfits and expensive vacations, were silent. Desperation clawed at her. The thought of Lucas's success became an obsession. She scrolled through photos of his new life, her eyes lingering on the smiling faces of Lucas, Jenny, and Elena. "I should have been there," she whispered to herself, her voice trembling with regret. But regret soon turned into a twisted resolve. Milda decided to take action, filing a lawsuit to demand custody of Jenny once more. She hoped that the court battle would force Lucas to settle financially, giving her a chance to reclaim some semblance of comfort. Lucas, however, was prepared. His lawyer dismantled Milda's claims with ease, presenting evidence of her neglect and abandonment. Witnesses testified to Lucas's unwavering dedication as a father and Milda's tumultuous past with Matthew. In the courtroom, the truth became undeniable. The judge ruled in Lucas's favor again, and Milda was left with nothing. Jenny, now old enough to understand what had happened, refused to see his mother. "She didn't want us, Dad. Why should I want her now?" he said one evening, his voice firm but tinged with sadness. As Lucas and Jenny returned home, Elena welcomed them with open arms. "We're a team," she said softly, her embrace reassuring. For Milda, the judgment was the final blow. Alone and penniless, she realized that her choices had led her here. The life she had abandoned was gone, and the life she had chased had betrayed her. Milda sat alone in her crumbling apartment, staring at the peeling paint on the walls. The echoes of laughter and luxury that had once filled her life were gone, replaced by the silence of isolation. The world had moved on without her, leaving her to reflect on the choices that had brought her here. Her dreams of wealth had cost her everything: her husband, her son, and even her self-respect. Matthew was long gone, Lucas had rebuilt his life, and Jenny, her own son, refused to speak to her. The realization of her failures gnawed at her. Meanwhile, Lucas was thriving. His marriage to Elena was a joyful celebration, surrounded by close friends and family. Jenny stood proudly by his father's side, beaming with happiness as Elena officially became part of their family. The years of hardship had transformed Lucas. He had gone from a heartbroken husband to a successful entrepreneur and devoted father. But what defined him most wasn't his newfound wealth. It was the love and stability he brought to those around him. One afternoon, while walking through a park with Jenny and Elena, Lucas spotted a familiar figure sitting on a bench: Milda. Her once vibrant appearance was gone, replaced by a pale, weathered face that spoke of years of struggle. She looked up and met Lucas's eyes. There was no anger or malice in her gaze, only regret. Lucas hesitated but then turned back to his family. He had no desire to revisit the past. His focus was on the life he had built, not the one he had left behind. Milda watched them walk away, tears streaming down her face. She thought about Jenny, how she had lost her chance to be his mother, how greed had blinded her to what truly mattered. Days turned into weeks, and Milda's loneliness grew heavier. The people she had once surrounded herself with were nowhere to be found. Matthew's gifts, the lavish parties, the designer clothes, none of it had been real. In her final days, Milda lived quietly, haunted by the choices that had led her to this point. She had chased wealth and status, only to lose the people who truly loved her. Lucas, on the other hand, continued to flourish. His family thrived, bound by love, trust, and loyalty. Jenny grew up with a strong sense of values, learning from his father's resilience and Elena's kindness. Milda's story became a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of how greed can destroy even the most promising lives.